Hey, Kyleen.
Hi, Alana. How are you?
Good. How are you?
Doing pretty well for a Wednesday.
Awesome. All right, everybody, I just want to take a moment and welcome you all back to our virtual career day series. My name is Alana Hosey, and I'm a project interior designer here at HKS. It's one of the world's premier architectural and design firms. If this is your first time joining us, it's our career day series, which intends to introduce students and young professionals to all the people that it takes to create the built environment. At HKS, we design everything from sports stadiums to skyscrapers, airports, hospitals, and we have over 1,000 people from all industries making it happen. Architects, engineers, accountants, and anthropologists, there's literally a place for everyone here. If this is your first time watching, we're in season 2 of our Career Day series. I suggest you go and check out our previous videos. One of my personal favorites is the interview with one of our office directors, Angela Lee. And all of the videos are available on our Instagram and our YouTube page. So go check them out. There's tons of other videos about design and what we do here at HKS as well. Today, I'm chatting with architect and senior sustainable design engineer, Kyleen Rockwell. Kyleen, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me.
So let's go ahead and hop right into these questions. As always, we start every video with the same question. When you were in high school, what did you think your career would be? And at what point did you decide that sustainable design engineering and architecture was the right path for you?
So I actually started high school in the business program, which was like a vocational school that our high school district offered. And so freshman and sophomore year, I was taking all the business courses. But I started also at that time, my parents let me get a little creative in the house. So I was like painting murals of seascapes, dragonflies. They basically had to paint over everything I did when they sold the house. But the business program didn't let me choose any electives. And I wanted to just explore architecture. And we did have architecture as an elective in school. So I quit. I was a business school dropout and then switched over to normal high school and took architecture courses. And then I realized when I was applying to colleges, I applied to architecture and engineering programs. So even back then, I was still kind of like, what role do I belong in? And ultimately, for undergraduate, I did decide to go to an architecture program. I think for me at that time, I was like, I want to be a little bit more creative and explore, I love buildings and design, and I just want to do them creatively than what I thought engineering might be.
Nice, nice. So you went to architecture school. I know you're a registered architect and you're working on, I think, your professional engineering license certification. I know from my own experience that involves a lot of education and a lot of testing. What advice would you give to a student or young professional that's interested in dual licensure? And is there a benefit to having both of those credentials?
So first of all, I love studying, and if you want to get credentials in anything, you're probably better off if you enjoy studying. I had some study habits in high school that maybe we can talk about later if there's time. But I think I would say to become, a licensed professional in anything, you should understand the prerequisites, kind of like what you need to have done in order to do it. And so for architecture, to take the AREs, the easiest path, you have to go to an accredited school. And same thing for engineering, to take their fundamentals of engineering exam, you need to go to an accredited school. And unfortunately, my roadblock, I realized too late, was my master's in engineering did not come from an accredited school. Actually, there's no master's programs, I think, out there that offer accreditation. It all comes in undergraduate. So it made it a little harder for me to take the FE, and then right now, so I was ultimately able to, but after, more years of experience, and then I should be studying to take the PE, although that's just been my own personal hurdle in trying to get that going again.
Yeah.
But I think in terms of credentials, like I know plenty of people that do what I do, and they're not architects or engineers, and they're still incredible at their jobs. It is a differentiator, and our market, if anything that kind of sets you apart from the pack, is is just going to help your professional development a little more. So I mean, if you're invested and you like taking tests and you like to challenge yourself, it's definitely like an amazing path to kind of take and do both.
Yeah, yeah. I'm a registered interior designer and I'm in the process of taking AREs right now. I have two left. So I totally understand the struggle. And you do have to love testing and studying. Um, but last year, as a part of this series, we interviewed, or Josh interviewed Mike Brown. He is also a sustainable design engineer here in our Dallas office. Viewers, if you guys haven't seen that interview yet, go back and check it out. It's definitely worth watching. His focus, though, is primarily on energy modeling, I understand, but I think you have sort of a different focus. Can you help me understand what your work here focuses on and how it shapes what we do?
Yeah. Yeah, so Mike Brown, he's on our team and he is fantastic. We do a lot of similar work. I'd say 50% of my time is spent on energy modeling.
Mm-hmm.
But then I think where we kind of diverge a little bit more is where I'll do a little bit more daylight analysis. So that's really
Mm-hmm.
looking at a floor plate or a whole building and saying like, you have enough daylight to kind of turn down those overhead lights, or you have glare discomfort in this spot or that spot.
Mm-hmm.
I also do computational fluid dynamics or CFD modeling.
Okay.
That basically you're going to be looking at the airflows in either interior or exterior spaces, and then you could look at the airflow, the direction it's coming from, the temperature it's at, and that helps establish comfort for that
Mm-hmm.
space. But I think the thing that I get most excited about, because to me it's a blend of architecture and engineering, is looking more on the building detail side of things.
Mm-hmm.
Working with our architects and designers, looking at some of their building details and helping educate them about kind of what's going on in terms of physics and conduction through that envelope. And then on the more advanced projects, really starting to look at getting into some cool software to look at thermal dew point condensation. So saying like, in a hospital, there might be a potential risk of condensation on the windows, and that's something we want to prevent.
Sure, sure. Wow. Okay, that's really cool, and that's a lot to digest. But I mean, you are an architect and an engineer, and I'm going to keep saying that because it's a major accomplishment and it definitely deserves recognition. But what you do does seem pretty specific. So, how exactly does someone in your position engage with projects and project teams here at HKS? Do you work on the same project like every day and see it all the way through, or do you kind of bounce around? How does like your work here work?
Uh, yeah, so I think I'm really lucky that I get to work on such a variety of projects with project teams all across our US and international offices. Because I'd say ideally we want to work with every project that HKS
Yeah.
on in design, and that's when we still have the ability to, help influence the design and help our
Mhm.
designers make decisions that are going to reduce our energy consumption, improve thermal comfort, all of those, like, to me, very amazing things. And, I used to work for an engineering firm and I felt like we were getting brought on way too late in the process. So
Mhm.
being at HKS and being, a direct contact to these designers early on really helps to, embed the ideas early on, and hopefully they don't get eliminated as the project continues.
Sure. Yeah, that definitely makes sense. As we dive into this last question, guys, if you have any questions for Kyleen, questions about sustainable design engineering, please go ahead and put them in the chat. We've already talked about education and the testing kind of required to become an architect and an engineer, but what do you think it takes to be a good sustainable design engineer?
So I guess it's really about communication, um,
Mm-hmm.
being able to communicate technical data. There's a lot of numbers, a lot of graphs. Communicate that in a graphic way that's easy to understand, and also be able to talk about it in a way that's easy to understand. And I think for that, I give so much props to my architecture and studio background because they force you to, stand in front of your work and present every single year, every quarter, whatever. So that is definitely one of the strongest strengths I think you need to have. And then second, I think in working with architecture teams is just fluidity and being able to compromise a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
Like it can't just be like my way or the highway because we're going to have buildings with no windows, and that's
Sure.
not great either.
Yeah.
So like just being able to kind of understand what the design aesthetic is for the project, and then prioritizing, what type of design strategies are going to benefit the project overall, in terms of maintaining that design aesthetic and our more ambitious, sustainable targets.
Sure. Okay. Interesting. All right. So we have a question from our viewers. DC Life is asking, at what stage of the project scope should engineering and design happen cohesively, or does one come before the other?
I think concept design is the perfect time for architects and engineers to sit at the table together and talk about things. Because if you start to think about an architect is working through massing options, where to put their glazing, and then that's where an engineer can sit at the table and give a little bit more direction and saying, that's going to increase your peak cooling load by 10%. Do you like
Mm-hmm.
that? Is that enough? Do you have enough of a desire to stand behind that massing change,
Mm-hmm.
or not? So it's a good conversation to have as early on as you can.
Nice. Okay. And then I know we have one question here. You've worked in, and this is from the internal team. I know you've worked in a couple of different offices here at HKS. You're in Denver now, right? And you were in the Chicago office before. So how difficult or easy is it to switch offices and kind of move around here at HKS? How flexible is it?
Yeah, so I spent 2 years in Chicago and now almost two in Denver. And I would say it is, well, Denver itself, I think, is an office of transfers. So we have a lot
Mm,
of folks that have come from, I think, mostly our Dallas office here to Denver. I think, something about the mountains calling us. But I think, especially for my role, I am considered more of a firm-wide resource. So it was a lot. It's definitely easier for me to be able to move offices, because I work remotely with a lot of teams most of the time. But I think seeing that in our Denver office that we do have so many transfers, you definitely can tell that HKS, values the talent it has and tries to kind of keep them happy and let them transfer offices if it does work out project wise.
nice. Yeah, cool. Okay, well, I just want to say thank you so much, Kyleen, for taking time out to chat with me. It's been a lot of fun. And guys, if you're watching, next week we'll be talking with Chi Batia. He's a senior architectural designer from our sports team out of our London office. So please come and join us. It should be fun. And as always, guys, if you have questions for Kyleen or questions about HKS, please leave a comment under this video. It's going to be available on our IGTV as well as our YouTube channel. So share it with anyone you think needs to know about career possibilities in architecture, and of course here